Even though I'm not into witchy horror, I can't put this down. So I was kind of whining about nothing. But who made that decision? So I have a new thing to whine about. I wanted a ghost story. It wasn't, so. To another vlog. I have been reading this book, The Weight of Blood, for one day, and I'm 240 pages in. I've been going back and forth between the audio and the physical, but I can't put it down. And you know what's interesting? So I picked this book up specifically. It was not, I didn't plan on reading it this month, but I read Tuesday's Not Coming by the same author last month, and I loved it. And then this author came out, Tiffany B. Jackson, came out with this book, which is a horror book, and it was just perfect timing. I want to read more from this author anyway, so here we are. So this story is about a young girl who's in an abusive home, and she is black, and she is white passing, and she passes as white. Her father doesn't want her to tell anyone that she's black. She lives in a really racist town, and so they straighten her hair and they tell everybody that she's white. So one day she gets wet and people realize that her hair texture isn't what they always thought it was, and everybody now knows that she has a black mother, which she's raised exclusively by her very abusive father. Also, she might be a witch. So like in the humiliation where people were mocking her and bullying her, she was able to, some things started happening. So what's interesting about this story is the way it's told. You have the core story with our main character and with the bullying that's happening around her, the way people are responding to her, this small town and how they treat black people in general, and then you have like the other side of it. So then you have like interviews and radio shows, people who believe in conspiracies and think that there's something, you know, a bunch of people died in this scenario, but we don't know, at least where I am in the story, I don't know how they died or what exactly happened yet. We're building to that in the main story, but the side interviews and stuff have told us like something catastrophic happens, and they believe that there's some sort of supernatural element involving it. And so we go back and forth between the core story and the interviews and the radio show, which, I mean, the interviews are happening on the radio show, so it's just anyway, news articles, like stuff like that, of people trying to figure out what happened because it seems so weird. So at least where I am in the story, it's not, the horror elements are more about like daily horrors, like abuse, racism, bullying, classism, like daily things that happen to people that are terrible. So that's kind of like what the focus is. The other book that I read by Tiffany B. Jackson is, it was literary fiction, and this is a horror, but it reads like a literary fiction. And I think the horror is just kind of background, like she's just learning how to use her abilities, she's looking up books on it, she's researching it, she's figuring out how to control it, but it's like, it's not scary, it's just a thing that's happening. I assume the horror elements will ramp up at the end of the book. So it reads more like the daily horrors are the focus, and then the supernatural horror is the backdrop, and I assume that'll kind of like rotate near the end. I'll let you know. I feel bad because just last book I said I'm not into vampire books, and here I am. I'm gonna sound real picky 2 weeks in a row. I'm not into witchy horror, so the supernatural side of it, I'm really okay with it just being a backdrop thing, because I'm just not, I don't care about that so much. I'm really into hauntings. I really like ghosty horror books, or like, if it's going to be a supernatural, I tend to be into hauntings. So this isn't my preferred the supernatural side of it isn't my preferred horror, but I love literary fiction and I love Tiffany B. Jackson, so I'm really okay with it being like super low-key horror at the moment, and then I'm interested to see what it looks like when it all amps up, when we get to like the thing that happened that killed all these students and stuff. But I'm enjoying it. So that's the funny thing, is it's not even my type of horror, this kind of witchy thing. It's not my type of thing, yet I read 240 pages in a day, which is not normal for me. So it's funny because Tiffany B. Jackson, I just can't stop reading her books because the way she writes, she makes her characters feel so real. She makes the things that they go through feel so close, feel so like you're in it with them. So I have a hard time putting down her books even when they aren't perfectly suited for me like this one is. So I definitely at this point enjoyed Monday's Not Coming. Enjoyed. You don't really enjoy that book, do you? It's a very it's sad book. Anyway, I liked Monday's Not Coming more than this one so far, but I still can't put this one down. So that's a really good sign. So I'm curious to see what these last, I guess probably 100 pages, under 100 pages, these last 60 pages, I'm really curious to see what they're gonna do, because I know we're building to something, and this is definitely a very like day-to-day small town kind of book more than it is a witchy book. So I'm curious to see how that's gonna change. Even though I'm not into witchy horror, I can't put this down. So that's a really good sign that I really like this author. So I'm excited to continue to read more from her and also to finish this book. Yes, those bookshelves that I just reorganized in another video are a little bit disheveled, but it's only because I just lent my niece several books, so I was pulling from there. Don't worry, they'll probably stay like that. I finished The Weight of Blood, and it's, okay, so here's the way I'm gonna describe it. When I read Pet Sematary, which I loved, it's by Stephen King, if you don't know, I recommended it to a ton of people and I got a ton of feedback of people saying this book wasn't even scary until the very end. And The Weight of Blood has that same pacing where, like with Pet Sematary, is the lighting terrible? Feels terrible. Oh well. Pet Sematary was much more focused on the daily horror of grief and grappling with that, and it just escalated and escalated and escalated. And the supernatural horror, which is like if you bury your pets in a certain cemetery, then they come back to life, but they come back to life wrong. That's really just background noise until the end, and then it swaps, and the supernatural horror is the main focus, but it still ties into the daily horror that's discussed throughout the book, and I loved it. The Weight of Blood is much the same, which I didn't know going into this book, that this is a retelling, reimagining of Carrie, which is another Stephen King book. I haven't read Carrie, and I didn't know that this was supposed to be that because I don't look into my horror books before I pick them up. So I didn't know that until after I finished it, but makes sense that I'm comparing this to a King book that I have read because it does have a similar vibe to it. So yeah, this one is very much about racism and bullying and abuse and not being able to be truly yourself around the people around you, around the people that you consider your family and your friends and that sort of thing. So like a lot of like daily things that people go through and just examining it really up close and personal, and then the supernatural stuff is kind of background noise until it escalates in a very King way, and oh my goodness, when we got to that part, whew, it was written amazingly. But that's definitely not what the focus, like if you're going into this book looking for a horror, that's not, you'll probably be disappointed. But if you're going into it looking for a conversation with horror elements, there you go. I definitely preferred Monday Is Not Coming. I preferred, which is Tiffany B. Jackson's other book that I just recently read. I preferred that one a lot more than this one. But even though it wasn't really my type of horror, I'm not into witchy horror, I think I said that in the other clip. Even though it wasn't my type of horror, I still thought it was just great. I'm gonna keep reading Tiffany B. Jackson. She's an author that I will keep reading from. So if you're a Tiffany B. Jackson fan, please do tell me what you like from her, and I will pick it up. Next, I picked up The Ghost Tree, which I'll tell you about. I'm 138 p.m. I'm at part 2. It's a witchy book. I know it's my fault for not looking into my horror books because I want to go in just like I want to just feel the escalation with the characters. I want to feel as clueless as the characters. I want to be in it. So it's my fault. But it's called The Ghost Tree and it's a witchy book. Who made that decision? I mean, it makes sense for there's the tree in this town called the Ghost Tree, and our main character meets up with her best friend underneath the ghost tree. And in this town, these murders happen. Once a year, a girl is murdered and the town collectively forgets. And this year, 2 girls were murdered and absolutely eviscerated, and they're found, and the town is collectively forgetting, but they're not forgetting correctly. There are some people that are remembering a little bit, but it's like, it's elusive. It's like they have to fight to remember. And on top of that, there are a couple of people in the town that are starting to see visions, and they're hearing from these dead girls. These dead girls are like trying to deliver information to help them figure out what's going on, and there's just a lot going on. But the supernatural thing at the core of it is witches. My family's home, so I'll wrap it up. We'll see how I like this. I'm enjoying it so far. It's very well written. But I wanted a ghost story. The Ghost Tree, and I have very neutral feelings on it. First of all, this book was not very witchy. I mean, like, the witchiness, the curse, the witchy ancestry was a part of the plot, but that wasn't a massive focus of the story, and I was kind of just whining about nothing. But it's also not very horror-y, so I have a new thing to whine about. It's fine. This book was fine. So the premise is it's a small town where nobody ever leaves, and also there's this curse on the town where there's this monster that comes out once a year in November and kills a girl. But not just kills her, eviscerates her, like rips her to pieces, and it's like gross. And so once a year this girl is sacrificed to the monster, and that makes the town prosperous and keeps the peace. And the curse was broken one year when the wrong person was killed, the wrong person was sacrificed. And so now things are going wrong. The curse isn't working right. So part of the curse is that the town forgets. So a girl is sacrificed, people are sad about it, and then they forget. And like the girl is like wiped from the whole town's memory. They collectively forget together. And so now it's not going right. Now murders are happening more often. They're happening, the book kicks off when 2 girls are killed, ripped apart, eviscerated, and they're not left where they're supposed to be left, and they're from out of town. And we don't mess with the people outside of our town. We're a very closed society. Outsiders aren't welcome, which is also a big theme in this story. So the murders are happening more frequently. They're not happening to the right people. They're happening outside of the month of November, and people are starting to remember people that were lost. There are a couple of characters that are starting to see these visions of the dead girls that are like speaking to them, or they're seeing visions of the murders happening. Blah blah blah. We also have like nosy neighbors, bigoted neighbors, we have newcomers into the town, we have a police force. Our main character Lauren is 14 going on 15, and then her best friend Miranda is 15. Miranda, the best friend, is really interested in growing up too fast, so she's really interested in dating and boys and all these things, but like in a pretty like she wants the older boys, and so she enters into some very inappropriate relationships. Then we have Lauren, who's the girl, our main character. She's the girl that is not growing up too fast and still feels like a kid, but during the book she also gets her period and she starts liking boys. There's a boy in college who shows interest in her, and so they go on a date and her mom's okay with it. I mean, she's not. She even acknowledges that the age difference is weird, but anyway, so it's like a coming of age slasher. It's not really, I mean, it's not my brand of horror, at least. I really like books that are very unnerving, unsettling, get under your skin, and The Ghost Tree didn't do any of that, for me at least. There wasn't really anything that was like high suspense, high intensity. It was just kind of it was just gory. And also this premise of, small closed society or small closed town, there's a curse on the town, you sacrifice a girl. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of elements of this book that I've read before, and I don't necessarily think that this book did anything that I haven't seen before. So while it was fine, I read it and I didn't mind reading it, but I also don't feel like it did anything that's going to make me remember it, other than casually making these little girls date grown men. I mean, for Miranda it was painted in a negative light, but for Lauren it wasn't. So I also read the second book in the Beneath the Dragoneye Moons series. So this is a fantasy, like lit RPG style book. I read the first book a few months ago, and I'm 3 chapters from the end of this book. So I have dedicated the month of October to horror books, and I've been having a great time at it. But even though horror books don't actually scare me, I just like feeling unnerved. Might need to see someone about that. Even though that's the truth, I don't like reading horror before bed because I don't want to tempt fate. Like right now I'm good. But if I read horror before bed, then it might ruin the fun for me. So I've been reading Beneath the Dragoneye Moons. I've been reading just like a couple chapters an evening before going to bed, and I'm 3 chapters from the end. I'll finish it tonight, so we'll talk about it now. So Beneath the Dragoneye Moon, it's hard for me to talk about the sequel because so much with the main character, with Elaine, happened in the first book with her, like, the direction, the path she chooses in life, the class she chooses, like, Elaine at the end of book 1 is so different from Elaine at the beginning of book 1 that to talk about Elaine from book 2, it's like, I don't know what I can say. So the premise of this story is Elaine, our main character, she dies, and then her soul is kind of like found by a goddess, and she's given a second chance at life. She's reincarnated, reborn into another world, another universe, another system. So it has like lit RPG style things, but she's not in a game. She's in another world, but this game works in stats and classes and leveling up. And lit RPG is not a genre that I've jived with in the past, but I actually really like the way this book does it. I really like Elaine. I didn't like her very much in book 1, but she has grown a lot as a person, and I really, really admire her now. I love the path she's taken. She's like she's really strong, but not in a take up my sword and I can take down 20 men on my own kind of way. Just like in a very unique way to her. Really noble, really giving person. And I really, really like her, and I'm enjoying watching her path. My main complaint for book 1 was just the writing was very amateurish. Which the author actually has said that he didn't even have a beta reader until book 3, so he actually just went back and did some heavy edits for book 1, which he did after I read book 1. So I don't know how it looks now, but book 2, at least as I've read it, I kind of have the same complaints. It's still, you know, it still reads as someone who is very new to the craft, but the story and the characters I'm really invested in. So I've had a great time reading book 2. I've read it very slowly, just as my in the evenings to wind down book, but I've had a great time with it, and I'll probably read book 3 really soon. It's a self-published fantasy series. And finally, so many things to talk about. See, what I underestimated is how fast horror books read, because they're usually very streamlined plots, really easy to get through, and also really gripping, so I just fly through them so much faster than fantasy novels. So I'm just like talking about a lot of things in one vlog in the month of October. Anyway, I'm also reading the 3rd arc for Vinland Saga. I'm on chapter 130, so I'm about halfway-ish through, about halfway through the arc, and so far, keeping it spoiler-free, so far I enjoy this arc less than the first 2. Both of the first 2 arcs I was immediately gripped, and with this one, I'm enjoying it a lot. This is not a negative review. I'm enjoying myself a lot. I'm introduced to some really fantastic new characters, but the plot, I'm not all that invested in. Characters, 10 out of 10. Plot, not feeling quite as much, but it's fine. And I'm excited to see where it goes. But there will be a review for it. We'll talk about it all. So what's up next? Like I said, I completed my TBR for the most part, and I still have a little bit of time left in October to read more horror. So what I want to be reading is The Stress of Her Regard, which I'm pretty sure is a haunting. I don't know, because I don't look into books too much before I read them. Maybe I should change who I am as a person. But I'm pretty sure this is a haunting, and I want to read a haunting, because I really like the ghost ship book, the ghost spaceship book. But I'm out of, so usually I like to read physical and audio together. So when I have time to read physical, I'm reading it. Whenever I have time to read audio, you get it. I switch back and forth. But this is not on my library audio app, the Libby app, and it's not on Scribd. So I have to buy it, and I'm out of Audible credits. And I'm not gonna have one this week. So I can't read it. So I think I'm just gonna read House of Leaves instead. I've actually already started it, and it's very good. So that's what I'm working on, and we'll be talking about it next week. I know I've read it, I've tried to read it once before. I'm trying again. I really hope I can actually push through the fact that I'm dyslexic and this book is not made for dyslexics, and read it, because it's quite good. It's quite good. So these are the books that I read this week. 2 witchy books that I did not know were witchy books. And I enjoyed this one quite a bit. And this is okay. As well as book 2 in the Beneath the Dragoneye Moon series, and started Vinland 3. Things are going well. Let me know what you're reading. Have you been having good luck with some spooky reads? If you have, tell me your favorite haunting book, please. Episodes every Tuesday and Thursday on this channel, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the first channel, which is linked in the description. I'll see you again soon.